Welcome, everyone, to Awaken Inner Wisdom, the show where we talk all about the evolution of ourselves. And oftentimes, what's happening out in the world feels like no one else is evolving, but they are. And we all play a really integral role right now in our own self-evolution, shining the light, working through the big heartbreak, working through relationships and everything that they bring to us, whether they're friends, family, colleagues. And so we're going to dive deep on some questions that have come in about, how do we navigate when we are evolving, no matter where you are in your journey. If you're kind of just stepping in, or you've been on this journey for a long time and you're really awake, it's all about breaking through. It's breaking through all of the programs and all of the ideations that get reflected back to us on a day-to-day basis out there. So I'm so happy to have you here with us. If you're watching live, welcome. I would love to have your questions in the comments. Just type them in and I'll be sure to get to them. And even if you're watching on replay, you can still write in the comments and I will bring them up for next week's show. Or you can go over to bethbell.me/question and enter your question there. And I do have a live studio audience today, which I always love to have. So I'm interested to see what might come forward for questions from them. But we'll go ahead and jump in and get started on some of the questions that came through. All right. Question number 1. What do I do when my family thinks I'm too sensitive or too out there? Kind of cheeky it sounds to say, but I would say get more sensitive and get more too out there for them. But I say that meaning that there's also a level of discernment that you want to have. We can, ourselves as awakened beings get short-circuited with other people that are very much in the third dimensional realm, throwing stuff at us. And in a way, we can do that to them too. So there's certainly a discernment that you want to use when you're up against loved ones and they think that you're too sensitive, because you've actually gotten yourself back to a place where you can feel your feelings, that you're not just living out of your mind and you're actually in your heart. And that's a real gift. So when you start to feel like, hey, maybe I am too sensitive, or people are telling you, hey, you're too sensitive, like what happened to you? Allow yourself to feel those feelings. And of course, there's a way we can move through them that doesn't have to be so dramatic maybe to everyone else. But it is something that I think you should really be anchored in pride, that you have achieved this ability to sort of get back to that, I'm going to say childlike self. And I don't mean that from a childish perspective. I mean it from a feeling perspective, that you're actually able to feel your feelings and process your feelings. So if someone says something or does something that hurts you, I think it is really important that we show our emotion. And again, I'm always going to come back to the discernment that there's times when, we might have to move through and they may not be the people that deserve to see some of our vulnerability. So that's always on the table. But I think the more we can show up and the more we can be vulnerable, the more we're teaching them through example how they too can do it themselves. So it is such an important time to, allow some of those comments to just roll and not take it too personal. Of course, yes, it is personal in many ways, but it doesn't have to be, because you are a reflector. You are a mirror for them of where they're headed. They wouldn't be in your life if they weren't wanting something from you in the soul contract. And oftentimes that is that you're waking up and they're not. There's that duality and that difference in perspective that is sort of that yin and yang that really helps people to continue to move forward, but through example, not just through words. So I would stay in the being out there, but be proud of it. Be proud of being sensitive. Be proud of how you've achieved this level of knowing yourself that many people just are barely even on the journey starting. So pride comes through as a really strong message to really be proud of yourself and all the work that you have done. And letting things roll a little bit easier off your back. All right, let's go into the next question. How do I stop feeling guilty for outgrowing certain friendships? Now, this can be a challenge because we have a lot of vulnerable moments early on in our life. And that's where we create real bonds with people. And we have, I can think back to high school where a lot of times some of those bonds, depending upon if you're still in your same hometown or you've moved around the globe, some of those relationships break quite quickly because you grow and expand so exponentially when you move out of your parents' home and you're into college and you're doing all these things. So there is like a natural breakaway. And so I think that example comes forward because it's kind of similar in a sense of when you start really awakening, you're breaking away in a similar way because your perspectives are changing and you're growing exponentially. And when we do this, there can be this real lopsided feeling in friendships, and it gets tough because you have history with them. You have vulnerable moments with them. You have a lot that you've shared with them that creates a really wonderful bond. But then you get to a place where you're like, but those are my old stories and I'm not that anymore. And sometimes they're not ready to take that next step to get out of those stories. And they want to stay, I don't know, stuck in the high school stories. They want to stay stuck in the college stories. They want to stay stuck in the first marriage stories, whatever the stories are, they're willing to still sort of stay back in that energy. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm breaking through. So it can be a real sticky spot. But again, I think that this is where you really want to be I guess the word leader comes forward. And I don't mean that from a hierarchical perspective. I mean that from a showing them the way perspective. I'm going to show you the way into a new friendship with me. And you're also going to allow them to earn the right to leave the friendship. And that's sometimes where I think it gets tough, because when you recognize that there isn't the growth opportunity in the friendship that you want it to be, you have to start making some tough choices. Now, I don't mean like hard choices, like we can't see each other anymore, I'm not going to hang out with you. I don't mean it like that, but I mean it just from a where you're going to be at in your own psyche when you're around these people, because you're going to have to be the one to shift the conversation, to move into a different topic, and to bring your awakening topics, your spiritual journey topics into conversation when they might not be ready for it. They might not really be receptive to what you're having to share and say. And so that's where you get to practice. You get to practice with the people that know your stories and that want to see you as your old stories. And yet you've changed. You might even change the way you look. You might change the way you dress. You might change the people you're hanging out with. And that's scary for people who aren't ready for change. And so those older friendships, and I don't mean age, but I mean like, time frame wise, they can bring up some really juicy nuggets for you. So I wouldn't say to jump out of them and create walls and separation and all of that, because they've got the juicy nuggets of your programming. They've got some real insights for you that allow you to practice. Like, am I triggered by my friend? How are they helping me to feel myself in a different way? How am I able to see my stories in a different way? And maybe you've transcended all of those stories, and that's great, because you'll know, because you won't be triggered. You'll be in this really blissfully neutral state, like, oh, and then there's that again. And then you'll be able to move on through, allow them to bring forward all of these interesting nuggets from your past. But then you move through, and the less emotion you have and the less trigger you have, the more it's just going to dissipate and it's not going to get brought up anymore. Your friend is just naturally going to kind of let it go, and they may let themselves go, and they may just say, yeah, it's not for me anymore. I'm not really in that same energy that, my friend is. And that's okay. And I think that there can feel like a loss, but I don't think that it has to be, because you use the word guilty. Like, how do I stop feeling guilty? And I think that let's just shift that word a little bit, because it's not about guilt. It's about really stepping into your power and glowing in a way that it's not that you don't care what they have to say. It's that you're not attached to the old stories that they want to share. And so it's a big difference. And once you start practicing that with, the friendships that have known you the longest, then you'll really know, like, hey, I know where I'm at on my ascension journey. I know that I'm able to break through, or I have already broken through. I don't have the residual with these storylines. So hopefully that's helpful. I always love to hear in the comments, even if it wasn't your question, I love to hear what you think. And if you've had issues with old friends, people who you grew up with, maybe from college, and that you just feel like you're not quite on the same page anymore. And how have you navigated? All right, we'll jump into the next question. And if anyone in the studio audience or anyone online wants to jump in, please feel free to do so. I'm always happy to have you. Okay, so here's the next question. Is it selfish to protect my energy and limit time with people who drain me? So I feel like this comes a little bit off of that last question. And I think that when we use the word protect, it's a completely fair word to use because, in a sense, you are protecting yourself. But there's an energy also around thinking that you have to protect yourself, because then you're also like just inviting the idea that you need to be protected. So I'm not saying, that you can't use that word. I'm just saying when you do use that word, just feel into how that creates an attraction for a reason to be protected. And so when you want to protect yourself, that perhaps you use the idea that you are wanting to really glow yourself so that it's that your light is coming through. And almost, I guess what's coming through is, that you're blinding them with your light so that there's no reason for them to even want to come into your energy bubble. That it's not like, ooh, I want to shelter myself because I'm worried about the outside world. It's like, no, as we evolve, the whole point is that we can walk around with this layer of protection, if you will, but that it's really our light and it's shining so brightly, and that it's a mirror, and that it's just accentuating their light, not inviting them to poke holes into our own energy field. So again, I'm okay with the word protect, but I feel like the message coming through is just to be careful energetically what you're meaning by that, because you could be bringing in things that you don't want to be bringing in simply because there's a bit of a dare I say, fear around somebody else. Because when you're really in your energy field, you know that others don't penetrate it. Yeah, they're going to try, and yeah, that's part of the lessons, but they're not necessarily going to penetrate it if you allow yourself to just glow and shine brightly out into the world. So yeah, again, I would use it as a little bit more of a protective bubble, but from a sense of shining your light out there, not from like worrying about what's coming in. All right. I would love to hear your comments on that as well. If you're online live, please don't hesitate to comment. And if the studio audience is, getting warmed up, that's great too. Okay. So the next question. Why do I feel lonelier now than ever before, even though I'm awakening? Yeah, this comes, I think, in waves. As you wake up and you start to experience the magnitude of love that is always within you, it comes and goes. It's always there, but it feels like it comes and goes based on things that are happening in our world, in our relationships, in our external world, in things that we're calling in that are challenging us and prodding us and pushing us a little bit out of our comfort zone. So I think that with this one, what's coming through is that loneliness is such a calling for your own self-love and your source to connection, because you are never alone, right? So there's this aloneness and there's this loneliness, and the loneliness is coming from the mind. The mind is creating a story that you are alone, or that you are that you're not connected, that you aren't in your powerful place. And the reality is that you are always connected. And I love how Mother Nature constantly reminds us of this, because Mother Nature, if you're a flower, you're a tree, you're a plant, you just know that all you need to do is be, and you receive. Now, I understand they're not, a flower doesn't have to, make money. It doesn't have to pay rent. I understand that. But what they're showing us is how when we just connect in and we just allow and we flow, that everything can really be in an organic cycle for us. So that comes back to that loneliness feeling where, yes, you may physically be alone in a room, But you can also be in a family and still feel this sense of loneliness. So I think, really separating these ideas of like being physically alone, being in a relationship and feeling lonely, or being in a family where you might have children and a lot of things happening where you're not alone, a busy social schedule. It's not about that. It's about your soul connecting to source and how you feel in that connection. And the way to really be in that connection is to make sure you're saying, okay, I get it. That's the mind. And I want that mind in the back seat. I want my soul to step forward and I want my soul to be connected to source. And when we really get that connection, um, the connection is always there. But when we really get that connection anchored in and we embody the feeling of that connection, then the mind doesn't really have a lot of leverage over us. But as many of you know, being on this awakening journey, the mind comes in super strong at times. And when it does, we have to look at that as an opportunity to see, okay, I get it. My mind is wanting to say that I'm alone. My mind is wanting to say that I'm not where I want to be. My mind, because your soul is always sitting here. It's always sitting within you and it's always connected to source. It's just facilitating that. So how do we go back to that? And it's the basics of breath, of feeling your breath. It's the basics of meditation, feeling what it's like to not have the mind, to be in no mind, and to allow that free flow, which can be so challenging. If you've listened to my show for a while, you know that one of the ways the universe got me into meditation, even though I had tried, this was many, many years ago, I was like, I cannot get that 15 minutes back. And it was because my mind was online so strong. But when the flowers came to me and I started photographing them, then I was able to just really be in the moment of observing the beauty of the flower, the scent of the flower, the experience with the flower, as opposed to intellectualizing what's happening with the flower. I was able to be in a different flow state with the flower that helped me practice what it's like to be without my mind in life. And it's an ongoing practice, isn't it? It's not, we can meditate and meditate and meditate, but until we're able to really take it into our everyday life, where we're just constantly, I like to call it mind monitoring. Like, where is my mind right now? Is that my mind? Is that my story? And finding ways to quiet the mind, like through meditation, through breath. I can't say enough about breath. I probably didn't myself understand the power of breath until the last couple of years. I remember many years ago when I was first waking up, like over 20 years ago, I bought these conscious breathing books. I didn't really know why, but I just was like, it's something about this. And I remember reading and I was laying on my floor and I was trying to do this breath. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really getting it. And then I had someone come and do a session with me it was actually a massage, like a Thai massage kind of thing. And they wanted me to breathe. And I realized that I started to have this tetany and my fingers would get all weird. And yeah, this was again, many years ago. And so I really had this aversion then to breathing, because she was asking me to breathe while she was doing the stretches. And so it took me many, many years because I was so scared of that tetany. And then when I started to realize, ooh, yeah, okay, when we're really clearing out our energy in our bodies with the breath, we're uprooting the apple cart a little bit too, because we're waking up some of these old memories that are sitting there at a cellular level. And we're breathing into our bodies. We're acknowledging that there is something so much more to our entire beingness. And we're then getting out of the mind because we're anchoring back in. And so I think the breath is coming forward because, we say, oh yeah, focus on your breath. You go to a yoga class, which is beautiful. I'm not saying that it's not, but until you actually get deeply into breath and you go to a breathwork session and you're doing rhythmic breathing, and then you're also doing the pauses, which, when you're breathing in after you've done a series and you're holding your breath, and when you're breathing out and you're holding your breath, what happens in your container is magical and beautiful and takes you to a place that you probably wouldn't get to on your own if you hadn't had that experience. So I think where it comes back to is this concept of loneliness, that when we connect into our physical vehicle, our meat suit, our bodies that are here to help us navigate this, this being human, right? Being a human being, that when we start honoring that and it starts waking up more and more and more, we can start bringing more light in because we're letting more of the darkness out. And darkness doesn't have to be bad. It's just our shadow aspects of ourself that we're continually clearing. And so I think that the basics of breath work are also something that can connect you right into your soul. Again, you're always connected to your soul, but beyond the mind, so that you can actually experience the feeling of being there. But here's where it also gets tricky, is that as you start to experience more of this beingness and more of this light and more of this openness and this expansion, then there's times of contraction. And during that time of contraction, it feels like, how did I get here when I was doing this? And the other thing is once you know, you can't go back. So once you start to know and know and know and expand and expand and expand, you can't go back to being that numbness. Yeah, there's, like these bumps, but you really want to be able to continue to hold the expansion. And so you're going to get tested. You're going to get tested time and time and time again. Where am I at with my loneliness? Where am I at? And coming back to, oh, okay, thank you. Loneliness is an opportunity for me to see where my soul connection with source is coming through. So I think if you anchor in that concept of, yeah, okay, welcome the loneliness and know that you're actually looking for more of aloneness, which means that you're okay to be alone because you're still connected. And when we do that, it really helps everything in our external reality to have less impact on us because we're so anchored in to what that beam of light is that's coming through and anchoring us here as a human and to help us with our purpose. All right, let's keep moving along. We've got some more questions coming up here, and we've got a quiet audience here. We've got a number of people online. I'm happy for you to come forward with any questions that you might be inspired to ask. Okay, here's another juicy one. How can I maintain a relationship when my partner isn't growing spiritually at the same rate as I am? Well, first of all, this is very common because when we find people that are growing, I think there's a misnomer here sometimes too, at least one that I've fallen into, where I always want my partners to be where I am. I always want, and a lot of times I'm the one that's done more work and I'm more expanded and I'm moving at light speed because I've found a way I have a strong spiritual toolbox and I found a way to process. I found a way to process the things that are coming at me and feel them and to move through them and to keep going. Whereas the other partner can feel really stuck. And so there's a fine line here because you have a soul contract. Now, of course, it depends upon how long we're talking about, maintaining a relationship, like how, if you're married to someone, if you're dating someone, if there's lots of variables here. But the point really is are you learning? And are they learning? And sometimes that other person is that stake in the ground in this 3D land. And they're the one that's helping to maintain some of the things that need to be maintained on a lower vibrational level that allows you to fly high. And I don't mean high in the sense of, high in that sense. I mean high in the sense of that you've embodied a lot of light and you've broken through a lot of the constructs and you're here to navigate this world differently. And yet, because we still live on planet Earth and because it's still a duality and a 3D reality, we still have to pay the bills. We still have to do things that are very grounded and anchored here. And so there are times when a partner who's not growing exponentially is the perfect thing for you because they can help hold the stakes down. They can help hold the foundation. Now, as we've talked about many, many times, if there's such an imbalance that you're getting pulled back and you're not learning and you're not learning, then there's a time when you have to do a little bit more tough love and figure out, okay, is this the time where that relationship, then that bond needs to dissolve and it needs to grow in a different way outside of the relationship? So there's some tough questions here, I think, about maintaining a relationship when my partner isn't growing, because we are, as beings of light, anyone watching this is someone who is here to help humanity. You're here to help humanity grow. And so, yes, it's a personal journey. Yes, you're only here to heal yourself. And we're here to help others. We're here to help others transcend their own realities, but through our examples, not by being in their shit, not by being stifled by our families, our friends, whatever the relationship is, that it is that we're practicing our own embodiment of light. And so sometimes the most volatile situations can be some of the strongest opportunities to build your strength, because you're going up against someone who you have a real soul contract with and a connection to. And that often happens with lovers, but it also happens with parents. It happens with the people that we love the most and that we're dependent, not dependent in a bad way. I mean, I guess in some cases people are dependent in a less than ideal way, but I mean in a way that we are really looking for support in a partnership with them. And sometimes that is a family member, sometimes that is the lover, the partner, and sometimes that's a good friend that we just really need their anchoring and their support. And sometimes they're not able to give it to us. And so I think, again, it's going back to just, what is the lesson for me? What am I learning? What am I getting? And how am I putting that in my repertoire so that I can then use my own spiritual tools and accentuate my spiritual tools? Because there's patterns. We go through patterns. And as you all know, that especially in romantic relationships, we have those patterns. So get your toolboxes out and accentuate, sharpen the blades. I don't really like the word blades because that sounds so, but sharpen whatever tool in your box that you need to. And it's going to help you either navigate and stay in the relationship or remove yourself from the relationship, hopefully in a conscious uncoupling. Sometimes that's very difficult to do when you're with someone who may be unconscious. So that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother show. Okay, let's keep moving on. I'd love to hear in the comments. It looks like we've got a couple coming in. All right, so I'm gonna jump to this question. After a few years of awakening and engaging in helping in healing programs. Okay. After a few years of awakening and engaging in healing programs, healers online, etc., I no longer am interested in this content. I'm happy now, but bored with what I used to need. Is that typical? Yeah, I think that's great. And in fact, what comes to mind when I read that is, I remember several years ago, a gentleman I used to call and I still call him my spiritual healer. He said to me, Beth, there's going to be a day when you're not going to need those books. And I just remember thinking, no, like I'm always going to have my entire huge bookshelf of all these books because I love all the information in there. And I couldn't see the day that I wouldn't want all of those books. And the day came and I was like, I don't need these books because everything I need is inside me. Yes, I still have some books, like literally a handful of books, because they're ones that I like to go to and I do my reading with them. So it's like you're dipping in when you're like, yeah, I just need a reminder. So I think it's great that you're at that spot where you're like, yeah, I don't need I don't like saying talking head, because it's in a sense what I'm doing right now, right? Is I'm a talking head, but it's also a reminder of certain concepts, of insights, of embodiment, of community and joining. And so if you continue to feel a community and a joining with whoever you are online with, then I think that's a good place to stay. But if it's a program and you feel like, yeah, I've been there, I've done that, I've really incorporated it, then I think that's great. I think it's great that you're moving beyond seeking outside of yourself, which we all do. And then, there's times when we come back to that and we go, okay, I'm going to up level. And there's new tools that I need. Like, for example, what's coming through to say is, there was a time in my life where I wasn't interested in star seeds. I wasn't interested in, where I might be a multidimensional being from or currently living in. And it just wasn't in my realm. And so I was like, yeah, I don't need any more books. I don't need this. I don't need YouTube. I don't need, And then I realized, oh, wait, there's other people out there that have gone to that next level. And they have already done a lot of that work. They already know a lot of that information. And vibrationally, I like to find people that then, oh, okay, thank you. So I think it's great that we go in waves. And so if you're in that phase right now where you're like, yeah, I'm good, then great. Then you're just, I feel like you're anchoring in all of the knowledge and the wisdom and practicing living it every day, because that's what life is. It's just a practice. And then I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in time you start watching another person and you're like, oh, I'm just like so into them, because that's what happens to me as well. And then I listen to people who are way beyond my expansion. And then I'm like, oh, okay, not because they're a guru, no, just because they've done the work in a different space, understanding different concepts, and at the end of the day, we don't really need to know any of these things. We don't need to understand polymath. We don't need to understand, our starseed lineage. We really don't. All we need to do is, as my spiritual healer would say, be the happiest motherfuckers on earth. And it's like really that simple. So I think we, including myself, get stuck sometimes, and not stuck, but stuck in the journey. Like, oh, I'm doing the journey, I'm healing, I'm fixing, I'm moving, navigating, when you're already healed and whole. And it's just really about being in the moment and being happy in each moment of right now, and how challenging that can be when the mind wants to tell us that there's something else that we're supposed to be worried about or thinking about or navigating through. And I think we've all had those experiences where when we're happy and we're just like happy go lucky, right? Hey, that's a phrase, isn't it? Happy go lucky. Do you think it came out of nowhere? You don't get necessarily lucky. It's like it just is. It's just the energy that you're in that attracts things to you, because you don't have resistance to it. You don't have resistance to an idea. You're just like happy go lucky. I'm willing to receive. I'm happy, and I'm just in a being state. And so, yeah, I think, that it's interesting when these phrases kind of just channel on through the happy go lucky, right? I think Stephen Covey used to say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So, we're doing the work. We're knowing ourselves more and more every day. We are unlocking our potential. We are living our potential. We are being, not doing all the time. Yeah, sometimes there's a place where we have to do things that we don't want to do, but there's also the choice of being or doing things in a more being state. And that's really the practice that we're all being asked to do, is to continue to be in that beauty and the energy of all that is, and allow ourselves to attract. We set intentions, we journal, we write things down, and that's all great. But I think a lot of times where it gets a little bit sticky is receiving, just really allowing and letting it come to you. And that happens, I feel, even more as we're even further on the journey, because we've manifested so much. We've brought so many things, and it was in some ways so easy early on, but then we get deeper and deeper and deeper. And so everything feels sometimes a little bit like whiter and brighter, but at the same time, like stickier and stickier, because the antes are upped and the lessons are bigger. And not that we need to put, these parameters around them, but it's just how the energy works to help us continue to move through. Just like an Olympic athlete would have to continue to push themselves. And the minute they break a personal record, they're looking for the next personal record. And I don't mean it in that way, but they are doing the work. They are building the muscle. They are really, what fires together, wires together, right? That's a Joe Dispenza, and it's so true. Okay, that's true. I can't see without my glasses. I liked different people and tools now. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for asking the question, because I think it is so typical of all of us to be evolving, and evolving with the people that we listen to, and evolving with the people that we're feeling a resonance with when it comes to our own spiritual journey. Okay, let's keep moving along here. We've got just a couple more, We're down to the hour. How can I honor the changes within myself while still loving the people I grew up with? I think this was really similar to the question earlier. Um, and I think, again, I want to just pull through an emphasis of something that's coming through here is um, that I grew up with. There's something about that phrase that um, is so juicy because that would be your really impressionable years. And so I think it's going back to the community that you grew up in. If you haven't already done this on your journey, thinking about the playground, thinking about how you navigated on the playground, thinking about the things that were said to you that made you feel less than, the things that were embarrassing, the things that shut you down, the things that you just don't even realize today had an impact on you growing up, because those were the impressionable years when all of the programs were being instilled. So it's not just from your parents, your parents are big ones, or whoever raised you, but the playground at school, wow, those are the impressionable times and the impressionable moments that some of us can go right back to certain moments and others we can't, because for our little minds and our little souls and our little spirits at that time, it shut us down in a way that we don't even have memory of it. It's just how trauma works. We don't have to put a big T or a little T on trauma, because if it was something that made us smaller, took away our power, or the perception that it took away our power, that until we go back to all of those little people problems, who we often keep attracting them in our bigger people ways. And so that's where I think the growing up, the people that I grew up with are such great reflectors and nuggets. And so if you have an opportunity to go back and be with those people, just listen to yourself, listen to them, listen to the topics that come up. In fact, I would proactively ask about, hey, you remember when we were in grade school? What would you say was like the most embarrassing thing that you remember? Or what was something that like really made you feel terrible? And okay, so now I'm getting a specific message that I'm supposed to share about myself, which seems kind of silly to say. But I remember when I was in like, I want to say 6th grade, and I just wasn't that great at math. Like, math wasn't my thing. I had to work hard at math. And I remember I went to the bathroom and my friend was super good at math. And we were both in the bathroom stall. And I was like, can you give me the answers to a few? I guess we were in the middle of a test. I'm getting like a snippet of this memory that's coming back. And so I remember she tried to help me, right? And I was like, because I just felt dumb, like I was like, I can't get the answers to the test. So that memory is coming forward just like out of the blue from nowhere right now. And then more recently, a dear friend of mine came and we were actually going to participate in a cactus ceremony. And somehow this topic came up of college math. And I said, I know my friend from remedial math in college. And she looked at me and she said, what are you talking about? We weren't in remedial math. And I was like, what? I thought we were in like, the basic math or something. She's like, no, like it wasn't remedial, like it was like we had to take an extra class, but it wasn't like remedial. And so we laughed about that. And we laughed about it again in the ceremony because it was the perception that I had had. So there was still a chip in me about math, about not feeling smart enough. And so I had to really just dig back into that to release some of those little people memories. And it wasn't something that was consciously in my mind, but as I looked at it, I was like, yeah, wow, that's so fun. Once that little energy pocket just went, poof, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. I didn't think I was good at something when I actually wasn't bad at it. It was just something I struggled with, but I had this whole story around it that wasn't even true. So that can happen when we spend time with people that we grew up with. So I think it goes back to, let's focus on what are the learning opportunities in relationships, because they're here as mirrors, you know that. And they're here to help us see something about ourselves that maybe is deeply embedded in our subconscious mind, or just something we just didn't want to talk about. And and then when we can laugh as an adult that we weren't so great at math, but somehow we survived and had, jobs that required a lot of math and we were successful. It's like, it just all seems so silly. All right. I think we've got time for one more quick question. Anyone else in the studio audience feel inspired to jump up with anything? Okay. All right. Let's jump in here with this last one. How do I deal with rejection or judgment when I start speaking my truth? And the word that comes through so loud and clear is practice. Practice. Just keep practicing your truth, because the rejection and the judgment that you're receiving are little tests that you've asked people to place for you. I don't even like the word test. I would say initiations. They're like little nudges for you to feel into, like, oh, okay. Where am I with my truth? Because many of us have been stoned in the square, burned at the stake in previous lives, or, whatever these narratives are, that these energy lines that are in the collective, to just be quiet about the truth. Be quiet about your truth. And your truth isn't someone else's truth, but there's nothing wrong with you having your truth. So I think that, again, it's a great opportunity for you to practice, like, well, what is my truth? And, it may be your truth today, and you may expand, and it may not be your truth tomorrow. And so it's not about, ooh, I got to go back and say, I was wrong. No, it's like, this is where I'm at right now. This is what I feel. This is what I embody at this place in time. And that place in time is going to change, and it's going to expand, and your truth is going to expand. The way you view things is going to be different. In fact, if it's not, then what is life all about if we're not expanding and growing and changing and having different perspectives? So I think, don't be hesitant to speak your truth. While at times we should use some discernment, because there is a lot of chaos and there is a lot of compassion that I think we need to hold within ourselves when it comes to speaking our truth and honoring other people's truths, because they can be vastly different. My truth isn't the truth of some of the people that are the closest to me. And that's okay. It's just that we have a different lens of which we're looking on that particular topic, or that we're looking on the expansion of, the humanity as a whole. So everybody's at a little bit different place, but speak your truth, practice your truth. If you feel like you're not saying your truth, I would also look for some fifth chakra type activities. It may even be singing. Like, it may just be picking up a song that really resonates with you vibrationally. It's like one that you love and you're like, yeah, this really gets me going. And you just start singing it. And so that you're practicing using your voice, and you're practicing feeling that feeling of what it's like to project out into the world your voice, the uniqueness of your vocal cords and the uniqueness of your thoughts and feelings, and be okay when it lands or doesn't land with someone, that it's okay. It's okay to have differing perspectives, but also bringing in that compassion. And I think that is a big part of what we're called to do right now with everything that's going on in the chaos of the world. Is, number one, let's not see it as chaos. Let's see it as growth. Let's see it as an opportunity to expand. Let's see it as an opportunity to practice compassion. Doesn't mean we need to agree, but we can be compassionate that other people have different views. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. If you want to go deeper on any of these topics, you want to have more of a conversation, there's the Intuitive Soul Advising program. That's a monthly program. Or you can sign up for the Awaken Inner Wisdom membership, and that we go deeper and we have conversation, and we really get into some great topics where we can pick apart and get to the nuances. And then if you just want to have something that's more private, you can always go to bethbell.me and sign up for a session or ask your own personal question. Either way, I love to help others break through their beliefs, unravel their mind, and get back to the bliss that is really our birthright. I'm so happy you're here. If you've watched the show and you've loved the episode, please give us a like, or you can always share it with a friend. And thank you, Yoga Rika. I love this. Practicing my own truth and honoring others' truth. Thank you. Yes, you're so welcome. And thank you so much for joining me each week at 11:11 a.m. on Sundays, Pacific time. And until next week, wishing you much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.